Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to welcome you to the panel dedicated to Uzbekistan. I'm joined today by Julian Beely, Chief Commercial Officer from the company Sport Tech, Anton Shotkin, Chief Marketing Officer in the company Marathon Bet, and Ravshan Bekumarov, Director at GoPay Uzbekistan, which is one of the biggest payment providers. I am Dmitry Bezushko. I work with 4H Agency, a boutique law firm focused on betting and gambling markets. And today we're going to talk about Uzbekistan and its recent initiative to popularize sports betting, a move aimed to boost the attention and invest in the sport talent. Also, a move to get the shady sports betting activity out of the shade, and this way save up to 50 million in taxes that are now missing and could be used for the better and for the development of the sport in the country. So I'd like to start as well with a little bit of a geopolitical situation. So we know that Uzbekistan is one of the largest countries in Central Asia. It's definitely the largest on population, and it's especially for me, it's strategically located very well in terms of it has a lot of strategic partners in the east and in the west. And Uzbekistan is looking both to the east and to the west and is trying to come up with best practices for implementing reforms and innovations. So the country's aspiration is to boost and to invest in the local talent, in the national sports. And that's why last December, President has proposed an initiative to legalize sports betting, and this way to drive more finances to the local sport, football precisely, as I've heard about their plans to build out the infrastructure and to popularize the sport in the country in all possible ways. So today I'm going to invite you to talk about all the possible implications and consequences that legalizing of the sports betting market may bring to Uzbekistan. And I'd like to start with an experienced point of view from an established provider. So I'd like to ask Julian about how do international operators view Uzbekistan? Is it worth investing to? Why would the international operators look into the Uzbekistan in the first place?
Thank you, Dimitri. Hi, everybody. Nice to meet you, and thanks for joining us today. So my background, as Dimitri says, is in working in international markets right around the world, 60-plus countries since 2003 in regulated markets and markets that are just emerging and opening up. And a mixture across the board, really, from poker, sports, casino, lottery, experiencing everything really across the board. So what we view as an exciting opportunity, I think, is when we look at a country like Uzbekistan, as Dimitri said, the population is huge, 33 million, a very exciting greenfield opportunity. So if you look at it from an investor perspective, it was, well, I think, voted the country of the year by The Economist in 2019, and a market that's got a lot of things that look at stand in good stead when you've got a very strong grey or illegal market that's currently in the shade, a strong appetite for sport, a good and decent mobile coverage. I think 24 million mobile users across the country. All the indicators are that it's an exciting time and that legalizing sports betting could be a very lucrative opportunity. I think from our experience, what we know in other markets is that one needs to temper their expectations too quickly for things like taxation revenue and development, because a developed market happens not overnight, it happens over time. So I think when we're looking at a market like Uzbekistan, it has huge potential, but that potential needs the right market factors in order for it to flourish. And that means a good, strong, attractive regulatory framework that's appealing for operators. I'm sure Anton will come onto that as well in a minute. It also needs other factors to go in its favor and lots of different parts of the ecosystem to work together. And that's technology, it's payments, it's infrastructure, it's marketing. I know Dimitri will cover some of those areas in a second. Luckily, we've got two guys actually live who can cover both payments and operations. So from an investor perspective, it's got huge potential. Its locale and its appetite to legislate gaming is very exciting. It's got a lot of things on the positive indicators that look very good, but that regulatory framework and the way that the market is created needs to be done carefully in order to nurture that growth at the outset, rather than stifle what could lead to an increased grey market and that money not coming into Uzbekistan as a country.
I see, Julian. Thank you. From an operator perspective, Anton, what do you have to say about Uzbekistani player? Do we have a portrait of Uzbekistani player?
Yes, hello everyone. Thanks, Dmitry. Thank you for watching us. So, speaking about Uzbek customers, I would say that, as Julian mentioned, it's very important that mobile coverage is growing. And I would say that mobile platform is the main platform for Uzbekistan when it comes to online betting. So, for example, it's different from Russia, because in Russia, desktop platform is still has half of the users. So, Uzbek customer is mainly mobile user. I would also say that Uzbek customers are very fond of esports. Esport is the second sports after football, which is very interesting in terms of growing esports market and growing marketing opportunities in this area. Which is also attractive that Uzbek margin is normally higher. That's something that we know from the feedbacks from other operators. So that's very promising region, very promising market, and we consider Uzbekistan as a very promising area with lots of potential customers interested in sports, which is being supported by success of local sportsmen, for example, in MMA area, like Mahmoud Muradov and Lilia Shakirova, first UFC fighters from Uzbekistan. So this is a good stage to enter the online market. However, decision on the market entering will depend on many points. So, okay.
I see. Thank you, Anton. The information that I have tells me that there are a lot of frameworks to be finalized and implemented before the market becomes operational. And I know that the political will is that market should become operational in 2021. Ravshanbek, a question for you in terms of payment infrastructures and what it is required to attract international, maybe set up local operations in terms of sports betting, what it is required, and is Uzbekistan quite there yet in terms of payment processing? Ravshanbek, I'm afraid you are on mute. I would ask you to turn your mic on.
And today, Uzbekistan, I think that is ready for for payment for payment for betting because there are there are 30 commercial banks and there are 12 payment system providers in the market, and now we can we can provide payments through Visa cards, Mastercards, and we have two local payment system. It's Uzcard. It's a national payment systems. Uzcard, Humo, and now payment system providers are creating payment wallets, and some PSP providers are going to establish cooperation with the mobile operators, companies, in order to provide payments through mobile phones, mobile balance. So, for example, now we are communicating with all five mobile operators, and we are communicating with them that we are offering them to provide payment services for their clients. And we have experience in Kazakhstan, and now we are just we are going to transfer our experience from Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan. And in Kazakhstan, WPay is cooperating with companies, betting companies, and that's all. I think
Okay.
there is no problem.
So
Yeah.
from what you've told us, I understood that primary payment method is online and mobile payments. I have a question from from one of our viewer to you, Ravshanbek. Will there be any use for cash terminals in Uzbekistan going forward?
Cash terminals, according to the statistics of Central Bank of Uzbekistan, there are about more than 5,000 cash terminals which can provide payments toward any merchants.
All right, all right. So we can state that the infrastructure is almost ready, and basically when the political will is going to be realized, the companies that servicing the market will be ready to jump in and take their part of work, right, dedicated to legalizing and opening up the market.
Yes.
From the standpoint, yeah. I may continue. From the standpoint of benefits of legalizing betting, can we turn to the experience of the Western countries? What are they? What are the benefits for the Uzbekistani sports players and the audience? And I'd like to hear the input of both Julian and Anton here. Julian, would you like to start?
Absolutely. I think the benefits are huge. I mean, if you already have people around the world, although we speak to people differently and there's some cultural differences, human nature is human nature. So from my experience working in places like Kenya, Nigeria, through the US, the UK, right across to Central and Eastern Europe, fundamentally people like sport. If there's an appetite and a desire to bet, 9 times out of 10, they will find a way. Whether the market permits them to do that and it's legal or not, they will find a route to do such a thing. So the key thing is, where you have a country, like Anton said, of 33 million population, sports fanatics, an emerging MMA and esports scene that's only going to get bigger and bigger. You've got some very other interesting sports and appreciation for the EPL. People are already finding a way to bet. So the important thing is that the regulations bring in a way that you can capitalize on this area whilst making it attractive enough from the player to leave the grey markets and play in the white markets. And then everybody benefits. The players should benefit from increased appetite and competition and offers and appeal, and the product should get better in that legalised framework. The country should also be able to benefit from a taxation system that isn't overly taxed, so it benefits those operators that come in and make the investments into those markets, but that also there is some monies that go towards good causes and, of course, go back into grassroots sports. So from our experience, the upside is huge, providing the regulatory framework is correct. Interesting, I know one of the questions is around responsible gaming, and that's part of the legislation and the regulations, is ensuring that you've got a taxation environment that suits those operators that are willing and prepared to invest in those markets, whilst also then creating a competitive landscape that makes the product better for the end user, that makes that appealing and attractive and exciting to play, whilst at the same time making sure that those people that do have an addictive nature are protected, so there is an area of responsible gaming. And that can all be done within a sensible regulatory framework where you then collectively build that ecosystem, and the ecosystem consists of everything from legislation, marketing, payments, and then sort of a responsible area of gaming altogether, because that doesn't happen overnight. The framework and the legislation creates that inertia, the investment and the commercial operators come in and capitalize on that, and then collectively the market is built. So the upside can be huge from a perspective of increased competition and creating a new industry, as you've seen in other areas of CIS, and also other areas of the world. But it can also, if it's not done properly, can also be quite damaging in some areas. So if you don't get the legislation right, then the black market continues to flourish, and there's no incentive for the end user, for the player, to go and play within the regulated space, nor does it create that competitive environment that you need within a country in order for it to be successful. So, yeah, these are all things that we can learn from other markets around the world, not just in the West, but right across the regulated gaming space.
Thanks, Julian. Anton, question for you. I know that you have something to add to what Julian has already said. I know that Uzbekistani government looks at their biggest strategic partners, obviously, it's Russia, and specifically in terms of coming up with the legislation and regulation for the upcoming sports betting market. I know that they were looking very much to England and MGA for the best practices. So out of your experience in terms of benefits of legalizing sports betting in the country, such as in Uzbekistan, and from your experience working in Russia, on the side of taxation and contributions that Russian sports betting companies make to the government, how do you view Uzbekistan in that regard? Will there be do you foresee a framework for this contribution to invest in the local sport?
Okay, so basically speaking about the benefits, I think this legalization, so basically three sides will benefit from this legalization: government, betting business, and customers. Obviously, government will benefit from taxes, and sports federations will benefit from contributions. Of course, it will depend on the specifics of the law, of the requirements, etc. So if the Uzbek government is going to use Russian experience, so obviously they will set up some contributions to sports. And basically, if I'm correct, this is the key point of this initiative, to support and to develop sports in the country. So the government and sport federations will benefit, as I mentioned, from taxes and contributions. speaking about the customers, it will be also very comfortable and important for them, because now not only running the business is illegal, but even betting from the customer side is illegal. So customers will feel free and comfortable. They will not be forced to go to some illegal, land-based betting shops. They will be able to freely use their own devices. They will be not forced to hide themselves anymore. So, of course, that's beneficial for the customers also. And obviously, this is beneficial for the business, because it will open a lot of marketing opportunities. And it's important personally for me as responsible for marketing in the company. So, but there are actually more questions than answers. So if, for example, but I hope that trying to support sports in the country, government will allow to the business to have deals with local football clubs and leagues. Basically, one of the fundamental part of our marketing strategy and brand strategy is sponsorship. So it will be very important for us to have opportunity to set up some cooperation, some deals with, for example, Super League or some of the local football clubs. So we have a fourth side, and individual football clubs, organizations that can also benefit from this initiative. So I hope I answered your question in short.
Dimitri, can I just follow on from what Anton said there? So it's a great point in that it's very difficult to people often look to other legislations and other regulators for a framework to copy, in essence. And the UK has probably been the most established framework for regulated gaming that's been around. I think when did we first licensed? 2001, I think. The difference is that it's one of the most competitive and mature regulated online gaming markets in the world here. So you're at a completely different life cycle than Uzbekistan. And the requirements, therefore, are quite different. Now, there's a lot that you can learn from what's been done in the UK in terms of protections of players and individuals and responsible gaming, and the way that operators have to hold themselves and are answerable to a commission, and the commission sits slightly separately from the government in the way that it regulates the space. But when it comes to marketing, and Anton makes a great point, I do believe that at the beginning, when a market is fresh and it's new, and an awareness around new entrants into that space needs to be created, it's very important that marketing isn't restricted and that sponsorship is key, because sponsorship does pay back to the markets, particularly in the early phases. So I think that is a very important point, that there aren't marketing restrictions imposed at all, really, because actually those companies coming in are investing in the country, they're investing in the regulated space, they're creating jobs, they're creating tax, they're creating a competitive framework, they're creating an environment where players are safe to play and moving them from a grey market into a white market. And it's important that those companies are freely allowed to express themselves in the way they acquire, I think, from my experience.
Yeah, sorry, that's obviously would be very fair to not only receive taxes and contributions, but create very comfortable opportunities for marketing, because even in Russia it's sometimes complicated. Not everything is allowed, but taxes are high. So that will depend on the regulation, on the tax policy and requirements. Thank you. I cannot hear Dmitry.
Sorry. I agree with you guys both, and I'm all for Uzbekistan implementing responsible marketing in addition to responsible playing frameworks. They are in the unique position to kind of borrow from the best jurisdictions that have already established everything in terms of regulating the market. And I very much don't want them to repeat same mistakes that I know Ukraine is prone to, like false promises of enriching themselves versus just the spice up the your love for sport, your affection for sport. And I think the Uzbekistan government has the right potential in mind, and the right idea is to finance the sport, make it more competitive, make it more attractive for the local and for the outside community. And moving on and talking about the benefits of legalized sports betting market in terms of payment infrastructure, Ravshanbek, is there any threats for the payment providers and processing companies that are already working in the country, that when the market will open up, there's going to be a lot of foreign interest in the country, and that can actually hurt the local payment providers? Do you have a take on that?
In my opinion, that payment system are being regulated by the central bank very well, and in order to serve betting companies, companies first of all should get license from the central bank of the Uzbekistan. If you don't have license, you cannot work in that market. And what about the current payment service providers? I think that all of them have enough experience to hurdle the risks in the market, to restrict, to provide high risk operations. I think that it's enough regulated now, and market is fintech companies are just looking forward to opening up this kind of market.
All right, thank you. You have a question from the audience. People are interested how to open an account in WhoopPay. Should they register a local company in order to do that?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. In order to open an account in WhoopPay in Uzbekistan, do they need to open local company also in Uzbekistan to be able to work through WhoopPay?
Do you mean physical entities or companies?
I think we're talking about businesses, yeah.
Yes, because first of all, not only WhoopPay, but also any company should make a due diligence. And now today banking system regulation requires that in order to work in our market, company must be registered, and must open bank account. If you don't have registration and if you don't have bank account, you cannot work. It's illegal.
Okay, I see. Moving on, and we have another very interesting question from the audience. Will legalizing betting in Uzbekistan play out as a domino effect, resulting in legislation of betting in other Central Asian countries? So who would like to take that question?
That's a tough one, Dimitri. It's probably best for you, but I think good question, Andrew. My opinion is yes, absolutely, because I think that the benefits of legislation far outweigh the cons of not. So when you see a country strategically positioned geographically, as Uzbekistan is, alongside several other markets performing incredibly well in this sector and increasing in revenue and taxation and also responsible gaming, in my opinion, would be absolutely, there's going to be a domino effect of legislation around the Central Asian region. That's my view.
Anton, what's your take on that?
I think apart from the sort of legal regulatory point of view, this would be a very great cultural precedent because you know those we are talking about Muslim countries. Mm-hmm. So apart from the legal restrictions, there are some sort of you know cultural views on betting. Some audience look at this area as something not decent or something. So I think Uzbekistan will be a starting point also in this cultural area. Will open minds and will allow other countries, other citizens of the other countries to look at this area as something legal, something decent, something which is developed already in all over the world, across developed countries, leading countries. So I think that would be a great starting point.
I agree. And before giving the word to Ravshan Bek, I'd like to point out that 4H is being approached by a number of companies asking us to provide analytics on sports betting market in Russia, sports betting market in Ukraine, and in Kazakhstan. So already we see that the domino effect is starting to unravel with Uzbekistan looking out on their neighbors and kind of borrowing the best practices. And then I can extrapolate that after the Uzbekistan successfully attempts to legalize sports betting, and it's going to be only sports betting because, as Anton mentioned, Uzbekistan is a majority Muslim country, but they are on their way to becoming a more secular state. And one of the top government officials, in his comment on the legalizing sports betting market, told that, yes, we are a secular country, and we want to import best practices in the like from the West, according to in terms of the sport, and we will legalize sports betting and then give the opportunity for those who want to participate, who want to bet on sports, to do that. And then, as far as I understood, their position is to just, if you're against that and you're not interested, so just don't play. And going forward to Ravshan Bek, I mentioned that there's already a domino effect happening in the region. So you have Kazakhstan company coming into Uzbekistan company to kind of build out the infrastructure. What else can be said about the Uzbekistan, you know, looking out and borrowing best practices in terms of legalizing betting activity or payment activity?
In my opinion, that if we look at the history, about 20 years ago, we had there were some companies who was engaged in a betting business, and when some time passed, this business betting business was closed. It was not due to religious point of view, but there was no infrastructure, there was no control. And I think that there is no a strong connection with the religious view of people. I think that if the market will be open, and there will be some companies who are mostly probably import the experience of other country into Uzbekistan, I think. It will be much more easier.
All right, so building up on top of bringing Western experience into the country, we have another interesting question from the audience. Are there any nuances from the standpoint of a traditional Western product in terms of look, the language? So obviously, a lot of companies will have to localize their lines and their offerings into Uzbekistani people. Are there any threats or hurdles in that process? Julian, what do you think?
Well, from what we've seen from our previous experience, if the companies that get this right when they enter a market do incredibly well and the brands can flourish. The companies that get this wrong when it comes to cultural nuances, front-end design and the user experience, I think some Western brands, and I don't want to name any names, but there's many that I can give, have got this wrong in the past where they have entered markets, and there are some examples in CIS where Western brands have done this, and they've gone in with their existing brand, their existing product, the same user interface that they use elsewhere in the world. And this hasn't stood them in good stead. They have no brand reputation. The brand doesn't mean anything to anyone in that particular market. And obviously the way that the information is presented and the user experience isn't suitable for the market. It's not customized. So my opinion would be absolutely, there is some minor requirements to amend the user experience. I think as Anton and I have already covered, it's a huge mobile market here. So 25 million mobile users, of which I think 90% is an Android market in Uzbekistan. So that in itself means that the channels are largely going to be mobile first anyway as an entry point, particularly in the times that we live in at the moment. Who knows how long we're going to be in this space, but there's been a shift globally really to everything being on the phone and online, but particularly on the phone. So absolutely, the front-end design and the front-end nuances, for sure, are going to be slightly different when it comes to Uzbek. And promoting the popularity of the core sports, whether it be lines on MMA, wrestling, weightlifting, big sport in Uzbek, and esports, as well as football. Anton, I'm sure you'll know a little bit more about this, but for sure, a localized offering is absolutely key to success.
Anton, do you have anything to add? Maybe if you can share the correlation, because we know that a lot of Uzbekistani, they know Russian, right? So there shouldn't be much problem of just bringing the product that has done well in Russia, right, and offering it to Uzbekistani player. But is there any correlation maybe between the unlocalized version versus localized version and the Uzbekistani player? Have you seen anything interesting in that regard?
Well, basically, I can only confirm what Julian said, and obviously, any brand entering the quite different market should adjust the product, adjust the probably interface or look of the product. Of course, mobile first must be the main principle. So, in terms of localization. Yes, some of the customers know Russian, but both Uzbek languages, I mean both in Latin and both in Cyrillic, is a must on the website. So at least in terms of languages, the products should be localized. And obviously the operator must offer what's interested for the local customers. I mean, in terms of sports event and markets. So, yeah, and you mentioned interesting point that. Julian mentioned interesting point in terms of Android coverage, and it's just a global common problem. We hope that finally sooner or later Google will review its attitude to the betting business and finally allow a betting brand to enter the Google Play market. That will be, very helpful.
We would all hope for that to happen. Gentlemen, there's 1 minute left. I have another interesting question in the Q&A chat. Is whether Uzbekistan, you think of online monitoring system in the country. From the sources that I'm familiar with, they are looking at the system to monitor or just to replicate data, but as of now, the frameworks for that is not finalized, so we don't have any final decisions. We only have, I think, the ways in which this can unravel. Ravshanbek, do you know anything about the plans to implement monitoring system?
Unfortunately, no, there is no information about monitoring system because the agency is just engaged in making regulation laws, and there is no much information about the future of this business from the point of regulation. I think that monitoring from what side? If it concerns payment system, that I think that the betting companies will be much more interested in fraud system, and they will communicate with those companies who have their own monitoring system, their own compliance system, and we are ready for that kind of challenges from betting companies.
All right, thank you. Well, in any case, I am constantly and very, very focused on all the recent developments in Uzbekistan. So feel free to add me on LinkedIn and subscribe to 4H Agency page for more updates. We are ran out of time, so I would like to thank all of you guys, Julian, Anton, Ravshanbek, for joining me today and to, I believe, opening up a bit more about Uzbekistan and its recent initiative to legalize sports betting. We hope that they would see a lot of success and that their initiative and drive to invest in their sport talent and the national sport will play out to the best. One last question, it's a bit speculative. Who do you think, and it's also a question from the audience, so the top topic right now is the US president election. So quickly, any predictions? Red or blue?
I predict Biden, and the Betfair had Biden winning. I'm going to go with the market, like Biden, I think.
All right. So what does market say? Does Marathon Bet involved in accepting bets on the elections?
Well, let me check. Basically, what I can see now, yeah, Biden has a slightly lower odds. So he's still a leader, but not obviously. That's complicated. So let's wait for another 3 days when they count all votes. So yeah, it may change.
Yeah, time will tell. Ravshanbek, your take, or we should wrap up?
I'm for business.
Me too. I hope whoever gets into power, they would continue the going forward and legalizing and regulating their betting activities in their country, I think to the best possible extent for the players of the market. Once again, thank you, gentlemen, and have a great day. Have a great conference.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.